The summer of 1943 was a pivotal moment in the Second World War. On the vast, rolling plains of Western Russia, something monumental was about to happen. This was the setting for the Battle of Kursk. It would become the largest tank battle in all of human history. The forces gathering were simply staggering. Two of the most powerful armies ever assembled were preparing for a decisive confrontation. The German Wehrmacht sought to regain the initiative, and it faced a Soviet Red Army hardened by experience. This was a titanic struggle that would shape the rest of the war. The fate of millions hung in the balance on these sun-scorched fields. Imagine a vast bulge in the front line, pointing deep into German-held territory. This was the Kursk salient, stretching for miles, a pocket of Soviet-held land. For the German High Command, the bulge was both a threat and an opportunity. Operation Citadel aimed to encircle and destroy Soviet forces with a bold pincer movement. German armies would strike from the north and from the south, meeting in the middle to trap the defenders. They believed it would be a knockout blow. But the Soviets were ready. Intelligence warned them of the plan, the where, and the when. They chose to absorb the onslaught, behind a deeply layered defensive system. The Red Army would soak up the blow, then counterattack with overwhelming force. To understand Kursk, you must first grasp its sheer scale. The numbers involved are almost beyond comprehension. Germany committed immense forces to Operation Citadel. About 900,000 soldiers gathered for the attack, many of them elite formations. Roughly 2,000 aircraft supported the ground assault. The Armored Fist, approximately 2,700 tanks and assault guns, was designed for a decisive breakthrough. Facing them, the Red Army prepared a reception of colossal proportions. Well over 1.3 million soldiers were dug in. Some counts rise to 1.9 million, including reserves. Tens of thousands of guns and mortars lined the belts of defense. More than 2,600 Soviet aircraft contested the skies. And then there were the tanks, over 3,300, with thousands more in reserve. The salient spanned thousands of square miles. The front stretched for hundreds. This was not a narrow city fight, but a vast countryside, where every feature could become a fortress or a death trap. The density of hardware was unprecedented. Dozens of tanks and batteries per mile. Even the air seemed thick with the promise of violence. Months of buildup poured men and materiel into the salient. Germany delayed to field newer tanks, giving the Soviets more time to fortify. The outcome depended not only on generals, but on workers and rails that fed the front. The Soviet strategy at Kursk was a masterpiece of defensive engineering. General Georgy Zhukov persuaded Stalin not to strike first. Instead, they built a fortress, 8 defensive belts stretching over 100 miles. Each belt was a complex web of trenches, ditches, and fortified positions. Break through one line, another awaited, and another. The design was attrition, grind the attacker down. Landmines were the keystone, turning the salient into the most densely mined battlefield in history. They were arranged to channel panzers into pre-sighted killing zones, thousands of mines per mile, anti-tank to cripple armor, anti-personnel to halt infantry. Every advance would be slow, dangerous, and costly for German engineers. Huge numbers of infantry and artillery manned the belts. The Soviets had mastered artillery concentration, ready to blanket the avenues of advance. Special anti-tank regiments lay in wait to strike at close range. The system aimed to split tanks from their infantry, then destroy them. Hundreds of thousands labored for months, digging, laying mines, building bunkers by hand. The result was a deep, elastic web, an immense trap the Red Army set and waited to spring. At Kursk, the Soviets were no longer reacting. They were inviting the blow. On the 5th of July, 1943, Operation Citadel began. Thousands of guns roared along the northern and southern faces of the salient. Then the cream of the Panzerwaffe advanced, the force that had blitzed Europe. They trusted in skill and technology. The Tiger, thick armor, and a devastating 88, killing at long range. The brand new Panther, built to counter the T-34, Fast, sloped, and deadly in theory. Rushed to the front, many suffered crippling mechanical faults. Behind them, reliable Panzer IVs, Panzer IIIs, and Stug assault guns. The armored fist aimed to punch through and race for Kursk, but minefields bled momentum immediately. Tanks were stranded, exposed to fire. Artillery, already zeroed in, hammered the panzers. German infantry struggled to keep pace in lethal lanes. Blitzkrieg stalled. Every yard had to be taken in blood. In the south, the 2nd SS Panzer Corps ground through the first belts. Commanders realized this was no swift breakthrough. This was the attrition the Soviets had planned. Crews fought in suffocating heat, under relentless fire, village to hill to trench. The climax came on the 12th of July, near a small town called Prokhorovka. Having pierced several belts, the Germans sought a breakthrough across open country. The Soviets sprang their trap, committing the 5th Guards Tank Army. Their plan, close fast. Fight at point-blank range, where the Tiger's long reach meant less. Hundreds of tanks tore into the waiting panzers. Crews stared at a storm of steel bearing down on them. The battlefield collapsed into a swirling close-quarters brawl. Vehicles collided, shells screamed and ricocheted. The air filled with smoke, the crack of guns, the screech of torn steel. Here, skill and raw courage weighed as much as design. By closing, the T-34s struck at the vulnerable sides and rears of heavier tanks. Faster and more numerous, they swarmed, and some even rammed. Hours of brutal fighting left a graveyard of burning machines. By day's end, the Germans were stopped. Both sides mauled, but momentum broken. The Soviets could absorb losses, tanks and crews replenished from vast reserves. Germany could not. Elite panzer divisions were bled white. The great gamble had failed. After Prokhorovka, the southern offensive lost momentum and failed to break through. In the north, Citadel had already stalled against impregnable lines. Operation Citadel was a failure. The initiative on the Eastern Front changed hands, permanently. Meanwhile, far away, the Allies landed in Sicily on the 10th of July. Hitler faced a new front and called off Citadel, pulling elite panzer divisions west. That decision sealed Germany's fate at Kursk. The Soviets did not wait. They launched Operation Kutuzov and Operation Polkovodets-Rumyantsev in the south. Fresh armies smashed exhausted German flanks. The tables turned. The Wehrmacht reeled into a long retreat toward Berlin. Kursk shattered the myth of German invincibility and lifted Soviet confidence. After Kursk, Germany would only react, falling back, step by step, until the end. It was the great turning point of the Eastern Front. The Battle of Kursk stands alone in military history. It was the largest tank battle ever fought. Its concentration of armor has never been matched. But numbers aren't its only legacy. It was one of the few offensives anticipated and met by a deliberately prepared, deep defense. The Soviet strategy, absorb the blow, then strike, was vindicated completely. From early defeats, the Red Army forged a modern, formidable force. Kursk marked the end of panzer dominance, quality overwhelmed by quantity and sound defense. Germany lost irreplaceable heavy tanks and elite crews. The Soviet industrial base, beyond the Urals, poured out T-34s at astonishing rates. After Kursk, the balance of armored strength swung decisively to the Soviets. After Stalingrad, Citadel was Germany's last chance to stabilize the East. Its failure locked the Wehrmacht into a war of attrition it could not win. Today, the fields are quiet. Trenches are filled. Wheat grows where tanks once burned. But the memory of that titanic struggle endures, a reminder of scale and brutality. Kursk was a clash of empires and industries, a turning point that set the Red Army on a path that would not end until Berlin. The Battle of Kursk was the largest and most consequential armored clash in human history. It combined unprecedented numbers, deep defensive mastery, and a decisive strategic outcome. From that moment, the initiative on the Eastern Front passed irrevocably to the Soviets. On these plains, the tide of war turned. Its legacy is a warning and a lesson. Preparation, patience, and scale can break even the strongest spearhead. From Kursk onward, the road led west, to the heart of the Third Reich. Thank you for watching.